What's up, Patriots? What is up? Welcome back. Welcome back to Military Money Mondays. Yes, here we are again. Military Money Mondays, the weekly show where we break down proven strategies to help our nation's heroes build lasting wealth, protect what they've earned, and turn their service into a legacy of lasting wealth for their families. So if you guys are joining us for the first time, I'm your host. I'm Dan Farnsworth. I am a licensed financial professional, a military wealth specialist, and also a retired Navy veteran myself. Served 23 years active duty in the United States Navy as a cryptologic warfare officer, and started my business as a way to give back to the veteran community that gave so much to me during my career. So on our weekly show today, what are we going to talk about? Well, we are going to talk about how veterans can triple the value of your VA disability compensation. So I know a lot of my fellow vets out there are receiving VA disability compensation, and most of you all are still working, right? So you still have additional streams of revenue coming in. The VA comp is 100% tax-free, okay? Always will be, right? So what can we do? What are some ways that we can basically increase the value of this, and in fact, even triple the value of this over the course of our life? Well, we're going to get into those strategies here over the next several minutes. So let's talk about the problem first. So the problem with VA compensation is that in most cases, right, veterans just kind of spend the money, right? It becomes, money that we spend on gas, groceries, golf green fees, all that stuff, the average, day-to-day life stuff, right? And when we talk about the amount of money, if you look at, these are as of November now of 2025, a 50% VA disability rating is going to receive, and this is assuming no dependents, not with spouse, this is just solely, veterans by themselves, is going to receive $1,102 a month for 50%. 70% rating is going to be about $1,759 a month, and 100% rating is going to be roughly $3,831. And of course, if you have dependents or you have, a spouse, then those funds are going to go up. Okay, but the problem, of course, is that there's no growth with that, right? Your check pretty much stays the same unless there are, cost of living adjustments year to year, which we do see on a regular basis. But for the most part, you're talking about a fixed annual income that is never really going to increase by any kind of a compounding multiple, okay? It also provides you with no legacy. Right. So at the end of the day, if all you're doing is receiving and spending your VA compensation, right, the compensation that you earned over the course of your service, you're not going to receive any kind of a legacy benefit from that, right? Your family is not going to continue to receive funds after you pass away. That money is just strictly going to end. Those stipends are going to end at the end of your life. And that's pretty much going to be the end of it, right? So we're concerned about creating a legacy for your family so that your family can still benefit for many generations after you're gone directly from your contributions and sacrifice. Okay, and the other problem is that we don't really have any leverage on it, right? So if we spend the money, if let's say we get $1,100 in a month and we spend $1,100, we're basically back to zero at that point, okay? We don't really have any leverage. We don't have any compounding factors that are going to allow that money to grow. So what are some ways that we can reposition those funds, right? Maybe we can defer the actual spending itself for a little bit, but we can reposition those funds so that we can optimize the growth and ultimately end up with a lot more value and a lot more money in your family. So what if there is a better way? Okay, imagine a world for a second where your VA disability compensation doesn't just pay the bills, okay? It actually builds something much bigger than that, right? Something that's going to last for many generations, right? And it's going to grow every single year. It's going to protect your family, and it's going to create income that never stops. Okay, so it won't stop during your lifetime. It won't stop during your kids' lifetimes or even your grandkids' lifetimes, right? It could end up paying for college, right? For your kids, your grandkids, it could end up, resulting in them being able to create these lasting legacies that's just going to continue on and on and on. Okay. So what we're going to look at is we want to make sure that we keep every dollar tax-free. Okay. So your VA compensation, as we said, is a tax-free asset. Okay. It's coming in every single month. It's not being taxed. So we want to keep it that way, right? We want to grow it anywhere from 7 to roughly 9% safely, right? Predictably. We want to grow it every single year. Okay, we got here 7 to 8%. That's a conservative estimate. I would say closer to 7 to 9%. Some years are going to be much higher, right? There are some years that we're going to get 15, even 20, 25%, right? Maybe even higher than that. But on average, we're going to grow this safely and predictably at about 7 to 9% per year, okay? And we're going to have zero risk in this strategy, okay? That's a key point here. We're going to link the gains to a market index like the S&P 500, which has done very well over the last 30 plus years. Okay, 3 out of 4 years have all been up, right? But we want to protect against those down years, right? We don't want our savings, we don't want our compensation to be losing 30 or 40% when the markets drop, right? And that is a reality for folks who invest directly in the markets, right? There are no guarantees in Wall Street. In these strategies that we use with Victory X Financial in our Retire Max Elite programs, these are protected strategies, right? These are strategies that protect against market volatility and keep you off of that market roller coaster year to year so that you can achieve financial peace of mind. Okay, and then ultimately we want to create a tax-free retirement income out of this. So we want to take basically a guaranteed stream of income. We want to put it into a vehicle that's going to accelerate the growth. And then on the back end, we're going to create a massive tax-free retirement income that, oh, by the way, is going to marry back up to the benefits that you're already receiving, okay? So at some point, we're going to stop repositioning the VA compensation into the long-term vehicle, and we're just going to start receiving it again along with the growth that we've built in the long-term vehicle, okay? And then at the end of your life, we're going to leave a tax-free legacy to your family, okay? The VA compensation, again, cannot do this, right? So we're going to leave a separate, completely tax-free legacy to your family that is not going to be subject to inheritance taxes or estate taxes or even income tax for your beneficiaries, okay? Whether that's your wife, your kids, your grandkids, your husband, whatever, or all of the above, right? Because you're in control here. You get to decide who those beneficiaries are. All right. So Retire Max Elite, again, a financial engineering marvel, okay, built entirely in accordance with IRS Code 7702, 72E, 101A, and the TEFRA-DEFRA-TAMRA regulations passed by Congress in the 1980s. Okay, if you're not familiar with TEFRA-DEFRA-TAMRA, just do some research on that, right? I will, if you guys have questions, and you're not familiar with that, you need clarification, just post those down in the chat. And I promise we will answer those questions as we're going here. Okay, so if you guys have questions on any of these regulations, we're not doing anything illegal here. These are not legal loopholes. Okay, this is all in accordance with IRS tax code and U.S. law. Okay, so what IRS Code 7702 allows us to do is it allows us to grow money tax-free inside of a max-funded cash value life insurance policy, which is what we're going to do and what we do with Retire Max Elite. Okay, and we do that, again, with zero market losses. Your principal is 100% protected in these types of strategies, and we're able to access the funds in a way that no other financial vehicle in the country, in the IRS tax code currently, can allow you to do, okay? There is just no other vehicle that allows this, okay? There is no other vehicle out there that allows you to borrow at will, on demand, for whatever reason possible against your principal so that your principal remains untouched, right? That it continues to compound as if it were never touched. And for whatever reason, you can borrow that money against your own death benefit, right? Later on, as your death benefit is collateral, you're taking the insurance company's money, right? And you're being able to reinvest that into whatever else, right? Anything of your choice, whether it's investing in stocks, whether it's putting money into real estate, whether it's buying cars, paying for vacations, weddings, you name it, okay? You are in total control. And when it comes to repaying those funds, you also are in the driver's seat there, right? Because you own the terms of the loan. So you get to decide how you want to pay that back early on in the policy. And then later in the policy, once you've built up a massive cash value, right? Then you get to take loans that you never have to repay, and those become a form of tax-free income that's going to supplement your VA compensation. All right. So how we're going to structure these policies, right? We talk about this week after week. We talk about this on our YouTube channel, which if you guys have been watching or you're not familiar with it, check out Victory X Financial on YouTube. We've got some great long form, some great short form content on there. We also host a lot of content on our Instagram page. And I will post the links to those in the show notes here in the description. Okay, so look for those in the comments. All right, so how we design these policies is critical, right? We've actually had some cases in the public here recently that really shined light on how critical it is to design these policies properly. Okay. One in particular, if you guys haven't seen the story, was from Kyle Busch, right? NASCAR legend Kyle Busch and his wife, who were sitting there talking about IUL and how they felt that it was a scam and that the marketing was poor. There are a lot of reasons and a lot of explanations that really kind of go into that. Okay, but I do encourage you to do your research. And I will say just up front that policy structuring is critical, okay? We don't design these policies so that, myself as the advisor and the agency that I'm representing can just make millions off of our clients, okay? That's not the purpose, right? We design these with a minimal death benefit, right? As low as the IRS will let us get away with. And really, to that end, the lowest possible commission that we can get away with, okay? And we do that so that the policies remain sustainable and so that they maximize cash value benefit, especially early cash value for the clients, okay? If you're seeing, multiple zeros in those first several years, it means that the majority of your premium is going to pay for a death benefit, and that's not what we want. Okay, so we want minimal death benefit. We want the most amount of money going to cash value so that we can max fund these policies, and we can make the most amount of cash. Okay, so then again, we're going to link the funds to an index, right, similar to the S&P 500, or it could exactly be the S&P 500. But there are other strategies that we can link to, right? There are hundreds of index strategies that we can link to. We can do it on an annual basis. We can do it on a biannual, or in some cases, even a triannual basis if you want to defer your index credits for up to 3 to 5 years, right? We can even link to a longer strategy so that you end up earning more over the course of 3 to 5 years. But in most cases, we're looking at an annual point to point. All right. And then we're gonna work to max fund these policies. Okay, if we max fund these policies, we're gonna keep our insurance costs to roughly a half to maybe 2% at the most, right? But roughly in that sweet spot, we're gonna keep our insurance costs down to about 1% of the total policy value. Okay, so that means that the other roughly 99% of the cash value or the premium that you're putting into the policies is going to be going to cash value. And therefore, you're going to have liquid access to that, and it's going to continue to compound year after year, again, on an average 7 to 9% annual basis. So again, we're going to minimize the death benefit, right? What that does is it minimizes the cost of the insurance, right? Which is part of that's sort of the cornerstone of the game here. Right, we want to minimize the cost of the insurance so that the maximum amount of premium is going to build cash value. Again, this is 100% permissible under IRS Code 7702. It does require us to have a minimum death benefit in order for it to receive tax-free treatment. Okay, that's why we have to have that death benefit, but we just want enough to where it allows us to basically satisfy the requirements of the regulation and still be able to build our cash values tax-free. Okay. So in this case, like I said, our index crediting, we're going to have a 0% floor in most of these cases. We have strategies currently that include bonus options that will raise that floor up so that you would be guaranteed at least 1%. In some cases, we can actually guarantee 2, 3, even 4%, right? Depending on how the markets are performing year to year. We review these these historical metrics. We review them every single year with our clients. We're able to advise on how to reallocate and rebalance your index crediting or your index strategies. We're able to advise on how to take, tax-free income or take tax-free loans, how to set up repayments to those loans. All right, we do that every single year. And in many cases, we do it more often than that, right? But at a minimum, we like to have annual reviews with every client to make sure that the policies are performing well and that we're reviewing the annual credits to the policy and that we're making sure that everything is staying healthy, okay? Most of these strategies, by the way, are non-capped strategies, okay? The index strategies, non-capped, right? Uncapped. Meaning that if the markets go up, you're going to get whatever the participation rate allows you to gain from the growth. Okay, there are strategies that we can use that have caps. Many of them are anywhere between 10 and 12%, especially if they're linked to the S&P. But a number of our strategies are more popular ones, and the ones that I use personally are uncapped strategies. So your earning potential is almost unlimited. Okay. Now, the critical aspect of this as well is that every year when you earn interest gains on your cash value, those gains are locked in for life. Okay, so unlike stock market gains where you could be up 15% one year, but down 30% the next, right? And you could have lost every single dollar that you earned from the previous year, right? In this case, when you earn credits to your cash values year to year, those credits are locked in for life. You will never lose them to any market downturns. The worst case scenario that's going to happen is you may earn 0 for a year, or you may earn 1%, depending on the strategy, right? So you might earn 1% for the year, but the following year, your indexes are going to rebalance. We could potentially reallocate, but they are going to rebalance. And so you're going to be basically starting off at 0, whereas everybody else that lost money is going to be starting off at a negative number and trying to claw their way back to 0. You're starting at 0, so then you get to just keep going up from there. All right, and then the strategy basically boils down to we're going to overfund the policy and then we're going to borrow out. So that's where the liquidity is going to meet that leverage. Okay, so we're going to basically fund this policy up to what the IRS will allow us to get in based on the death benefit, right? Which we talk about, and we strategize that out from day one. When we're building these policies, we ask our clients, how much would you like to get into it? How much, and we show, like, what does the cash value look like if you get, $500 a month, if you get $1,000 a month, if you get $2,000 a month, what does that look like, right? You can put in lump sums. You can start off with lump sums. You could put in, tax refunds, bonuses, any kind of windfalls. We account for that in the way that we're designing these policies because we want to get them max funded. Okay, that's the goal, to get these max funded to be able to minimize that insurance cost. Okay, and then while the money is compounding, you have access to it. Okay, that's where the liquidity comes in. And again, this is why, this is one of the reasons why, at least, why these vehicles are so valuable in comparison to other investing strategies, because you have liquid access, right? You could, if you've got a $50,000 cash value, you could borrow out $25,000 and you're still going to be earning interest on $50,000, right? I mean, what kind of stock portfolio is going to allow you to do that, right? I mean, if you were to take $25,000 out of your 401k, you've only got $25,000 left that's compounding at this point, right? And if you do it with a TSP, there are only very specific circumstances which you can borrow against your TSP, and even then, the requirements for repaying that loan are very rigid, and you're going to lose all of that interest that you're repaying, right? You're not going to recuperate, you're not going to recuperate the interest that you're repaying to the policy or you're repaying to your TSP. That money is going to be going back to the bank, okay? So again, we would use loans for major expenses, whether they be, rental properties, whether they be education, emergencies, okay? And you're essentially repaying yourself early on so that you're earning money the same way that the banks are, right? And there's no credit checks. This is just simply between you and the insurance company. It's a very simple one-page form that you just have to sign. The loan monies are deposited in your account every single month or whenever you request them, okay? And then you can set up your own repayment schedule, and we work with you to help show you how to do that, okay? All right, so let's talk about a real veteran example. We posted a video this week on YouTube where we kind of break this down over the course of a 10-minute segment, but let's kind of dive in here. So in our scenario this week that we're going to talk about, we're going to look at a hypothetical example of a 40-year-old healthy male veteran, right, who's receiving 50% VA compensation, we'll say. Okay, so maybe he's receiving $1,100 a month of VA compensation, and he wants to be able to reposition these funds because he's still working. Okay, he still has a job, still gets a salary. Maybe he's contracting for the government. Maybe he's working in the private sector. Maybe he's even, working for the government, right? But he's still receiving this VA compensation, and he wants to be able to increase the value starting immediately, okay? To be able to still leverage the funds, to still have access to the funds. He doesn't want to just lock them away for the next 25 plus years, right? He wants to be able to still access the funds, but he wants to triple the value of his VA compensation. Okay, so starting at 40 years old, he's going to take $1,000 a month. Okay, so roughly the majority of that VA compensation check, right? He's going to take that. Maybe he started out at 50%, and then maybe it went up to 80 or 90 or 100%. So he's just going to take $1,000 from that, and he's going to reposition it into one of these properly structured Retire Max Elite tax-free growth strategies. Okay, and we're going to say, just on a conservative basis, we're going to estimate a 6.6% average crediting. Again, we do this because we want to essentially under promise and over deliver, right? Under promise, over deliver. So we're going to be very conservative with our growth estimate here. In most cases, in 99% of the cases, these policies are going to outperform those illustrations, especially the way that we design them. Okay, historics, we go through this with our clients. It's in these illustrations, the 20-year, the 30-year historical metrics on these indexes. So a 6.6% estimate is a very conservative estimate, but that's what we're going to go with because that's what our illustration software allows us to go with. And we're going to say that this 40-year-old individual is planning to start drawing income at 65 years old, right? So off of his VA compensation, he's going to reposition it for the next 25 years. And then at that 25-year mark, he's going to start drawing income off of the reposition funds, and he's going to resume drawing income off of his VA compensation. Okay, so during this funding phase, he's going to contribute $1,000 a month from his VA disability comp into the Retire Max Elite policy. So that's $12,000 a year, right? Simple math. Okay, so over the course of 25 years, he's going to reposition $300,000 during that funding phase. Okay, now by age 65, the veteran's policy has grown to about $735,000. And again, this is a conservative estimate, right? We said we're compounding at 6.6 is what we're estimating here. So his policy will have grown to $735,000. So before he even starts drawing income off of this, he's already more than doubled the value that he put in. He put in $300,000, now he's got $735,000. So that's about 2.5 times his initial contribution or his overall contribution. Now, on top of that, He also has a separate death benefit, right? Again, if you were to invest the funds directly into a Roth IRA, which you couldn't even get $12,000 a year into a Roth IRA, okay? You guys know that, right? You have contribution limits into IRA funds that basically before the age of 50, you can't get more than $7,000 a year. And after the age of 50, it's only $8,000 a year. So you would not be able to get $12,000 into a Roth IRA if you were planning to do a similar strategy. And you would also not have a separate death benefit. Your death benefit would just simply be whatever was in the account at the time. So in this case, he's got $735,000 of cash value, but he also has a $900,000 death benefit. So the death benefit is going to be even bigger if something, God forbid, happens to him, before he's old and ready to, to take the final journey. Okay. So now at the 20-year mark, okay, so we're going to assume that this veteran lives, just for illustration purposes, we're going to assume that he lives to be 85 years old. Okay, so during that 20-year income phase, he's going to stop contributing to the policy. Okay, so that $1,000 a month that he's been putting in this whole time, and we're assuming he hasn't even done anything with the liquidity, right? He's just simply been putting this money away. He's going to stop doing that at age 65, and he's just going to start drawing income, tax-free income, off of the policy every year for the rest of his life. And if he does that, we'll even take a look at the illustration itself, right? So if you zoom in here a little bit, you can see that starting at age 65 in that net distributions column, he's drawing almost $64,000 every single year for the rest of his life. Okay, he's amassed about $735,000. You can see that in the current values column. Okay, all the way down at age 65, about $735,000, and he's going to start drawing about $64,000 a year every single year for the rest of his life, and that's going to continue even if he lives to be 120 years old. Okay. Why is it so powerful? Because again, his current values have not changed, right? They continue to grow because he's accessing the funds as a tax-free policy loan with his death benefit as the collateral. Okay, he's not actually pulling money from his principal. Those loans never have to be repaid, right? His death benefit will satisfy those loans. Right. So if he lives to be 85 years old, you can see here, come down to age 85, go all the way across, you can see his remaining death benefit is still $500,000 after all of those policy loans have been satisfied. Right. So if we come back over to our income phase here, okay, he's drawing over the course of 20 years. If he draws $64,000 a year, that's about 1.3 million, 1.28, so 1.3 million of tax-free income over the course of 20 years. Okay, and even then, his family is still going to receive almost $500,000 tax-free at the end of his life. So we're talking about roughly 1.775. Okay, so almost $1.8 million of total benefit, total tax-free benefit, off of a lifetime contribution of $300,000. So basically 25 years worth of $1,000 a month of money that was basically just tax-free, that was coming in, that was not part of his annual salary. It wasn't money that he was having to put in extra hours to earn every single month. It was just kind of part of his compensation package from the VA. Right, he was just simply repositioning these funds, and over the course of 25 years, he repositioned $300,000, and he turned it into almost $1.8 million of tax-free income. All right, and every single dollar along the way was protected from market crashes, and every single dollar is backed by the guarantees of a highly rated insurance carrier. Okay, companies that are 100 times more solvent than big banks and other financial institutions. And the proof is in the pudding, okay? Look at the historics, folks. Look at the Great Depression era. Look at the Great Recession era. You had major juggernaut financial firms that went under during that time because they were over-leveraged, right? It is against the law for insurance companies to be over-leveraged like that, right? So they are very heavily regulated, and they guarantee every single dollar of premium that you put in. Okay, and again, this is entirely mathematical, right? We're not making any conjectures here, right? This is mathematical based on the provisions of IRS Code 7702 and the way that we design these policies. This is a very conservative estimate. Is it entirely possible that he's going to end up with a lot more than 1.8 million? Absolutely. Okay, but for the purposes of this illustration and this estimate, we're going to say 1.8 million is what he basically converted 300,000 over the course of his life into. Okay, now what if he lived to 100, right? We said that this veteran lives to 85, but what if he lives to 100? Well, if he does that, he's going to actually end up with over 2 million, almost 2.25 million of total income drawn. He's still going to have over $1 million of death benefit. Why? Because his death benefit is going to grow along with his cash values at some point, even if we level it off, right? Which we do. That's part of the design with these policies. We grow the death benefit up to the time that we start taking income, and then we level it off so that we keep our policy costs to an absolute minimum when we're drawing income. Okay, but as his cash values grow, at some point his death benefit is going to have to increase. Right, because if he's earning 6.5% or 7%, in a year on, $800,000-900,000, that's a lot of money that's going to force his death benefit to grow. So if he lives to be 100, he's going to have over $1 million of separate death benefit, right? Which is basically going to give him over 3.25 million of total lifetime value. So in that case, if he lives to be 100, he basically took that triple and he turned it into 11 times the original amount, okay? 11 times his original amount. Okay, so what happens if he did nothing in this scenario? If he just decided, well, I'm just going to take the income, right? We said his total lifetime benefit with this Retire Max Elite tax-free growth strategy was 1.8 million. But what if he just took and spent the income? Well, over the course of 45 years, right, starting at age 40 and ending at the end of his hypothetical life at 85, right, he's going to have about 595,000 total. Okay, now is it tax-free? Sure, yeah, it's absolutely tax-free, right? He's going to get $1,100 a month, and chances are it's probably going to go up at some point, right? If he's only getting 50%, but even then, cost of living, it's going to go up. But over the course of his life, even if we only estimate 1,100, he's still only getting about 600,000. Okay, with Retire Max Elite, he's only repositioning about half of that. Okay, so think about that. He's only taken over the course of his life. He's going to receive 595,000. He's only repositioning 300,000 of that into the Retire Max Elite policy to be able to generate 1.8 million of tax-free benefit. Okay, he still has that remaining 295,000 that's still coming to him, right? So if you add that on to the total compensation, right, you now have 1.8 million plus an additional 300,000 of benefit that's still going to be coming to him every single month, even while he's taking that 64,000 a year, right? So you just add on that, you re-add in that extra 1,100 a month. So now instead of taking 64,000 a year, now he's taking well over 70,000, almost 80,000 a year, right? 64,000 plus 12,000. He's still drawing about $76,000 a year of just strictly tax-free retirement income. Okay, that's on top of his pension, on top of his Social Security, and any other income that he has. Right? If he goes and gets a second job with a second pension, he's still going to get the second pension. Right? If he continues to do work, whether it's side hustles or whatever else he does, none of that is affected. Okay, that's all going to be separate income streams in addition to the funds that he repositioned. So less than half of the funds that he repositioned from, or less than half of the total amount that he received from the VA, repositioned in this strategy, and he tripled the value of that. Again, the legal foundation, we're not doing anything illegal here. IRS Code 7702, you guys can look that up. It's not a loophole, it's not a gray area, it's explicit tax law. It is designed to favor these strategies, which is why The ultra wealthy have been doing this for decades. Okay, way before 1997, when Index Universal Life was introduced, they were doing it with whole life. Okay, it just so happens that in the modern era, right, Index Universal Life tends to be for this purpose, right? The reasons and the way that we design these policies is the superior option, right? Hands down. And we can have that discussion. You know, we've got a video, in fact, on our YouTube channel that talks about why we use Index Universal Life as opposed to whole life. So if you really want to, you know, kind of geek out on that stuff the same way I do, go to our YouTube channel, again, Victory X Financial, watch that video. We'll talk about that. Okay. And while we're at it, you guys see the QR code kind of up here in the corner. I'm going to, hold on there. I'm going to point to it. There we go. That QR code goes to our Calendly link. Okay, so if you guys want to book an appointment, it's an absolutely free discovery call. We'll talk about strategies, even if we don't end up doing business. You know, I consider myself and my business to be in the education space. We are all about informing, educating, and empowering, most importantly, empowering veterans, right? Our nation's heroes. We even expand that to, you know, first responders, DoD contractors, federal employees, and just patriotic American families, okay? If you love this country, we are here for you, and we want to help you to live a prosperous life and to create a legacy for your family, okay? All right, so let's jump back in. Again, if you guys want to book a free 30-minute discussion, again, no obligations, no strings attached, use the QR code above, or just go to calendly.com/victory-x financial. Okay, so calendly.com/victory-x financial, or just shoot me a message. Just put a comment down below. Just comment, comment wealth, and I will reach out to you. And we can get you scheduled again for a free 30-minute consultation, no strings attached, no obligations. We talk about this stuff, and I'm happy to explain and expound on all of the regulations and how we design these policies, and ultimately how it can benefit you. Okay, again, no obligations. So why does it work? Well, because you have safety and you have control. Okay, we talked about the safety features, the 0%, in most cases, even a 1% floor. You get the annual lock-ins. You have the guarantees, that the carrier provides from day one. Okay, these are A-rated carriers, right? AM Best, Moody's, Fitch. Okay, very, very solid companies with long storied histories, hundreds of years, in fact. All right. And you have basically, guarantee funds with additional protections up to state limits. Okay. Control features. You don't have RMDs in these type of strategies, right? Required minimum distributions. You get to be 72, 73 years old and you decide you don't want to take the income out of the policies. Guess what? You don't have to, right? Because the IRS is not coming after your cash values, right? And in fact, it's those same cash values are also protected from crediting agencies. They're protected from civil litigation. They're protected from divorce courts. Okay, your cash values belong entirely to you. Okay, they are protected. They are hands off for taxes, litigation, seizures, anything of the sort. Right, totally hands off, totally protected. It's your money. Okay, there are no income phase taxes, right? The IRS knows you have the money, but it's not going to show up on your 1040 form. You have full liquidity, right? You have access to roughly 90 to 93% in, depending on how we structure the policy, up to about 90 to 93% in that first year of the cash values that you put in if you need it. Okay. You've got flexibility in how you fund these policies. It doesn't have to be funded the same amount every single year. It doesn't have to be month to month. It can be whenever you can comfortably put money into the policy. You could even skip years or skip months. Okay. Now, obviously, we encourage our clients to get as much into the policies so we can max fund them, right? But if it's not comfortable in that particular month, year, whatever, you have flexibility in how you can fund these, and you can fund them at much higher levels than you can fund traditional IRAs, 401ks, and Roths. Okay. So just a feature comparison, right? We look at some of the more popular financial vehicles out there in the country, Roth IRAs, 401ks, and then direct brokerages with like stock mutual fund portfolios. And you can just kind of get a sense of where the RetireMax Elite tax-free growth strategy falls in comparison to these other strategies. Okay, you get tax-free growth, you get tax-free income, you get a 0% market floor, so you're guaranteed to never lose money. You have no contribution caps, right? You're only capped by how much we set the initial death benefit and how much we grow the death benefit by. So in most cases, it's unlikely that you're going to hit those contribution caps because we can always add on more very cost efficient death benefit, right? Very cheap death benefit to be able to create more room in the policies and increase your contribution caps, right? So there basically are no contribution caps, period. Okay, they're protected against creditors. You have no RMDs. Okay, and you can see across the board what those limitations are in those other vehicles. Okay, you also have in a Roth IRA, this was something I didn't mention before, but you have what's called a 5-year holding period, where once you start contributing to a Roth IRA, you have to wait 5 years before you can access any of those funds, even if you're over the age of 59 and a half. Okay, if you're under the age of 59 and a half, you're going to get hit with a 10% early withdrawal penalty, even though the money is post-tax dollars going in and it's tax-free coming out. If you pull that money out before age 59 and a half, 10% is coming right off the top. It's going to Uncle Sam. Okay, 10% right off the top going to Uncle Sam. That's the IRS early withdrawal penalty. Okay, and again, when you lock that money away in a Roth, even if you're over the age of 59 and a half, you got to wait 5 years before you can touch it. Okay. In IUL, you can touch that money within the first 30 days. Okay. Guaranteed. Right. And we structure the policies in a way, we discuss that in these discovery calls, in these initial policy design sessions. We discuss, what are the things that you're going to expect out of this policy? What do you want to be able to achieve? Right. And so we design the policy, we customize that to your specific financial needs. Right, so that if you need to access funds within the first 30 days, the funds are there for you to be able to access. Okay, and we only work with carriers. Suffice to say, we only work with carriers that will allow us to have that maximum flexibility. All right, so just some common questions that we can answer. Okay, do IULs have fees? Yeah, of course. It's an insurance product, right? At the end of the day, we're still purchasing some semblance of insurance, right? But again, the way that we design these policies, we're not designing them just to purchase insurance, right? We're not designing these to just create a massive death benefit, that we're minimum funding. Now, there are some instances in which we do, right? But those are separate strategies. In this particular case, right, we're designing them with as little death benefit as we can get away with, maybe a couple $100,000 tops, right? Or somewhere in that ballpark. Depends on what your needs are, right? But we're designing them with as little as we can get away with, so that over the long haul, you're averaging anywhere from 7 to 9%, and you're only paying about 1 to maybe 1.5% total to just pay for the death benefit. Okay, it's still, like I said, it's still it's still an insurance product, so it's not free. But it's going to give you more leverage and more liquidity than what you're going to get in any other financial vehicle. Okay, and if you die early, right? What if I die early? Well, your family receives the full death benefit from day one. Okay, here we kind of have a little bit of a mix-up. It talks about $895,000. That's what it's going to grow to over the course of your life. Okay, but from day one, let's say we started the policy with a $250,000 death benefit. If you made one monthly premium of $1,000 and you had $250,000 of death benefit, your family's getting $250,000. Okay, that's how it works. You don't have to, you're not paying up to the point where you now have a death benefit. Okay, your death benefit is guaranteed from day one, so long as the policy is in good status. Okay, can I access my money early? Yeah. In some policies, depends on how we design it. You might have to wait a year depending on how we fund it. Okay. But in other designs, depending on what the needs are, right? If you want to start accessing those funds early, in that first year, even within the first 30 days, those funds are going to be accessible. Okay. And then, am I too old to benefit? Okay. Does it make sense for a 60-year-old, let's say, to leverage something like this, right? To use something like a properly designed IUL for retirement income? And the answer is, yeah, it certainly can be. If you were to contribute, let's say a couple $1,000s a month, at age 60, you would still triple that value in the course of about 10 years. Okay, so we're not just relegated to younger people being able to benefit from these policies. Now, if you're 60 years old and you already have, a considerable savings in, let's say, TSP or 401ks, I would recommend that we leverage those strategies first before we start looking at, using these type of strategies. But again, it's not to say that we can't do it. Okay, if you have no savings and you're 60 years old, this is certainly a way that you can get some leverage, and that you can basically, still triple the value if you're receiving VA compensation. Okay, so you can still reposition that and you can still benefit. All right, so real world flexibility, again, we talked about, all the different various reasons. This is not an all-inclusive list. You can use your funds however you want to, including recontributing them as premium into your policy. Okay, so we'll kind of talk more about that in maybe a future episode, but you can use the funds from your IUL to reposition those into your policy and basically continue to grow your cash values. But these are just some examples. You can fund a business out of it. You can pay for education. You can use it for emergencies. You can use it for a home purchase. And ultimately, you're going to be using it for tax-free income, right? And we said in this scenario, the 40-year-old veteran was able to generate $64,000 a year on a conservative estimate from $1,000 a month going into the policy. All right. So if you guys are digging this, you're with me on this, and you want to find out how you can benefit from these strategies, or if you want to just learn more about these strategies, the best way is, like I said, if you go to the calendar link, I'll go ahead and post it in the comments section. You can visit victoryxfinancial.com. Okay, if you head over to the victoryxfinancial.com, we actually offer a free Veterans Wealth Guide. And in fact, if you comment wealth in the comments below, I'm going to send you a copy of our free book, our published book, right? It is a free book to you, but our published book, it's on Amazon. We charge about $13 for the book if you order it on there, but I will send you a free copy. So just comment wealth in the comments there down below. I will send you a free copy. We published this book earlier this year. You can see I'm the author, Daniel Farnsworth. I published this book as a deeper dive. Okay, it's about 111 pages, and we talk a lot about these strategies. So again, Retire Max Elite, The Veteran's Guide to Tax-Free Wealth and Financial Freedom, available on Amazon, but I will send you a free copy if you comment wealth down below, and I will even pay for the shipping. How about that? I will even pay for the shipping because at the end of the day, like I said, we're all about education. We're all about just empowering our nation's heroes with information that they did not receive. I guarantee you didn't receive any of this information while you were in the military, because I didn't receive it. And I know for a fact that they just don't teach this stuff. This is not commonplace knowledge. This is stuff that's, these are tactics and strategies that are used by ultra wealthy individuals, high level entrepreneurs, and we want to make it accessible to you, the veteran. Okay. So that's about all I got for this week, guys. If you have any questions, again, I will stick around in the comments section for a little while. But otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for this week. Again, check out the YouTube channel, right? We have a video that basically summarizes this very topic in about 10 minutes. Okay, and if you guys want, again, the link's down below. Just book a free call, right? We'll just have a conversation. That's it. Just a conversation. 15, 20, 30 minutes, I'll answer your questions, and I can just kind of show you how these strategies can work for you and how we can combine other strategies along with these ones to really be able to maximize your comfortable retirement, okay, and maximize your legacy for your family, okay? We focus on protecting families, we focus on empowering and creating prosperity for families, and we focus on building legacies that last for generations, okay? And we're doing this to help our nation's veterans, right? Because we owe it to our nation's veterans. They have sacrificed so much for this country, and they deserve to live very prosperous lives as a result. So again, I'm Dan Farnsworth. I'm a retired naval officer, owner, founder of Victory X Financial. And next week we'll be covering another topic. I got to figure out what that is, but we will be covering another topic next week. It'll be same time, same place, 5 p.m. Eastern. It'll be here on Facebook, on YouTube, and also on the Victory X Facebook page. So be sure to check it out. Look at keep an eye out for the event notification, and I will see you guys real soon. See you.
It's your thing. Do what you wanna do. I can't tell you what the song can do.